Hi, I'm CJ from 11 News. Australians continue to be rocked by horrific deaths at the hands of family violence, and it's only surged during the coronavirus pandemic. Statistics show that on average in Australia, one woman is killed every 9 days by a current or former partner, and one male every 29 days. One child is killed by a parent almost every fortnight. Now today we're joined by Judith Richards, who has survived extreme trauma and PTSD to come out on the other side, and now she trains practitioners to help others through traumatic events in their life. Hello Judith, so tell me, how does someone in a domestic violence situation escape?
I can talk from both sides, from perpetrators breaking free from their own behaviours and their own pain. Because hurt people take away their hurt, they stop hurting people. The rage disappears, their symptoms of trauma go away and they become a lovely, gorgeous person. So there is that side, and then there's the side of the victim, of the perpetrator.
What stories have you heard about domestic violence victims and how did they break free?
Oh, I could tell you stories. There's so many stories. I mean, it's such a cycle, isn't it? It's such a cycle, and I don't want to tell stories that would vicariously traumatise the viewer, because there are lots of those. There are some people who've been through horror movies of abuse, the most wicked, evil, violent torture you could imagine. I won't tell those stories. There are other people who've suffered other severe injury. There are people, and it's not just men who are the perpetrators. I had a client who was stabbed right through the abdomen by his partner. I had another guy who had his wife pour boiling water over his head while he slept.
Gosh.
So there's also men, less of them.
We seem to hear more about the women, don't we?
We hear about the women. But there's no shelter for a man to take his children where they'll be safe. I had one woman driving around the house trying to pin him to the house with the car. Rode off. So I just want to make a point that it's not just men. The majority are men, but there are some women out there who are so traumatised and in such pain. It's like what happens is you can only give out what you're full of. You can't reach into a great big container of milk and pull out a bucket of wine. It'd be nice if you could. You can only give what's in there. So that's what happens. It all comes out and it gets aimed at the people closest. On the side of the victim, for want of a better word, there have been so many who've just turned their lives around completely. Like myself, I came out of the last and most, I worked my way up through the hierarchy till I hit the jackpot of violent, abusive people who use torture in every possible way, physically and in every other way. And at the end of that time, because that was 9 years, I came out of that thinking that I was believing that I was cognitively disabled, that I was unemployable because I was so stupid. That really no one would ever employ me. I came out with a completely broken body. I've lost a lot of my insides. I lost my mind. I lived in absolute fear. I wasn't on any electoral roll. I didn't have any bills or phone or anything in my name. I never had a lease in my name. I would move house every couple of months. I lived in tents in national parks. I lived in my car. And that level of brokenness I have seen again and again and again and again and again and again and again. You know, like the woman whose ex used to break into the house at 2 o'clock in the morning and pick up the toddler and throw it against the wall just to upset her. People have been through the most horrendous stuff, and their resilience is extraordinary with this process, because what happens is the brain shuts down when we're in fight, flight and freeze, and these people are stuck in that. The brain shuts down, the gut shuts down, everything happens. And so the memory shuts down, long-term memory stops. And instead, that event never comes to an end. It's stored in the subconscious. And the body is responding as if that's happening now, it's happening now, it's happening now. So what we have to do is turn off those videotape loops. It's a different model from the normal model that psychologists use. And it works. And so turn off those videotape loops and do the rest of TRTP, and people come back so resiliently. Change their programming in their subconscious, and they come back tall and proud, and they don't ever go back into an abusive relationship.
Judith, I want to ask you a question, but you don't have to answer it. You were in that relationship for 9 years. So what kept you there, and how did you escape?
My story is a little bit unusual, I guess. I was stuck there because I believed that I would never get a job. I would never be able to financially secure a living, that I'd be on the streets. There's a part of us that believes I deserve that. I deserve to suffer. Even before we were born, we take on ideas of who we are, how the world works, up until we're about 7. It's a well-known phenomenon. We take on the ideas, I deserve to suffer, I deserve to be punished, I'm no good, blah, blah, blah. And this becomes the story of our life. And so what happened with me was my body fell apart. I couldn't get away, so my body fell apart. I won't go into the dreadful things that happened with my body, but I was too sick to have surgery to put it back together. My insides were falling out, can I just say that? From every possible place. I was covered in sores. My mouth was full of ulcers. I was bleeding from the breasts without breast cancer.
Gosh.
I was not in a good way.
It's hard to imagine.
My digestive system had completely stopped. And in that way, my body saved me and got me out of that town and to another state in Australia to have surgery eventually. So that's how I got away. It's amazing what we do subconsciously to get ourselves safe. But for most people, to get away needs a really good plan and lots of support.
Do all abusers have similar characteristics?
There are different types of abuse. And people look at domestic violence and they look at all these women who've been killed. There have been some men, but more women. And they expect a big history of violence in that relationship before the killing. But with coercive control, the first act of violence may be murder.
And what is coercive control?
Coercive control is controlling another person by instilling fear and threatening them. So, I'd love to get into schools and do red lights in relationships. When your boyfriend or girlfriend is texting you all the time, where are you, how are you, it's not cute. When they're jealous, it's not sweet. These are the first signs of coercive control. So it ends up with isolating the person. There's financial control. There's no, you can't get a job. No, you can't study. No, you can't get a driver's license. No, if you're leaving the house, give me the bank cards. And the person's life gets smaller and smaller. If you have a friend or someone you love who's got a new relationship and gradually they're less available to you, gradually they become more isolated, the alarm bells should go off.
But then how do you get that person back? 'Cause
that is the problem. That's the $1 million question. I have someone in my life at the moment, and I'm just every couple of weeks sending a text, look up coercive control. And I know he'll be looking at the phone. Look up narcissistic abuse. Look up isolation in abuse. Look up control. So just little things, Education is the key because it happens slowly. It happens slowly, and the freedoms are taken away slowly, and the put downs increase slowly. And it's like brainwashing.
It's a fear that keeps them there.
And it just takes away yourself. And then you wake up one day and realise, hey, I've been in an abusive relationship for the last 9 years and I didn't even know it. How stupid am I? But then you do the tick boxes. Yep. That's me.
So how do people recover from a domestic violence situation?
Once again, well, lots of people sit in therapy for years and years and years and years and years, and their confidence remains absolutely shattered. They're exhausted. Their body starts to break down because when you're in fight, flight, freeze all the time, every system you don't need is switched off. So your immune system is switched off. The gut stops working because you don't need to digest breakfast. You're only supposed to be in fight and flight for like 20 minutes till you run away. But it's 24/7. It's just... The only way I know that's fast, effective, doesn't re-traumatise, and doesn't just allow the person to manage their symptoms, but gets rid of the symptoms and returns a person to confidence and to full life and full being. The only thing I know is this process, and I sound like I'm a fundamentalist, but if there was something else, I would be spruiking that as well, because all I'm on a mission just for people not to be, there's no need for people to be in pain. And it can be sorted.
How do people find which practitioners have been trained in the Richards trauma process? Just on your website?
Yeah, just on the website there's a practitioner directory, and the thing is it's just as effective online as it is face to face, and so much mental health and health is now online. And so you can work with anybody.
Yeah.
So go and ring up people. They're used to being ring up. Find a match. Don't just accept anybody because you matter. So find somebody who's a good match for you. They're used to having conversations.
If you had a message for the perpetrator and victim who are watching this, what would you say to them?
If you're a perpetrator and you don't want to be a perpetrator, there's a way. You're not a monster, you're hurt. Hurt people hurt people. There are some perpetrators that just love it. This is not for you. But if you don't want your family and the people you love to be terrified of you, do something about it. This resolves your pain. For those who've been the victims of perpetrators, it can be so easily turned around, and it sounds like it's too good to be true, and some things are. But talk to one of the clinical doctors of clinical psychology, go to one of the medical doctors, go to someone who's, who you can trust is highly, highly, highly qualified at the top of their field.
But just check the car for trackers first.
Check the car for trackers first. Don't be tracked. And if you are in a bad situation, find yourself a phone that nobody knows about except a couple of people and hide it.